From the heartland of America, it's the Bail in the Midwest podcast. Hosted by Shane Rolf. Executive producer, David Stuckman.
Hello and welcome to the Bail in the Midwest podcast, where we explore a variety of topics related to bail, pretrial release, and the criminal justice system in the Midwest. My name is Shane Rolf. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Kansas Bail Agents Association, and I've worked in this field for the past 39 years. Now, just to give you a little peek behind the curtain here at Big Time Podcasting, we normally record the podcast on Tuesday, but in my real job, bail bondsman, I had a couple of court appearances scheduled, and for some reason, the judges just weren't willing to reschedule court to accommodate my podcast schedule. And one of those hearings was in a county where I don't normally post bond. But in Kansas, we can post bond, we can post what we call an out-of-county bond if the defendant is in custody in a county where we do work. So in my instance, the guy was in Johnson County, but he had a warrant out of some other county. We call this a returnable bond, since the bond is posted and then returned to the issuing county. And as the legislative chair of the Kansas Bail Agents Association, I'm probably more familiar with the statutes surrounding bail than the judges and prosecutors who enforce those statutes. That's not me boasting. It's just a function of the fact that there's a very small number of statutes that deal with bail, and we as bail bondsmen are very focused on those statutes, whereas the judges and prosecutor have to deal with literal books full of statutes. Most often when dealing with bail issues, the courts default to this is the way we've always done it standard. And this happens a lot with individual bondsmen as well. And when you take this approach, it becomes pretty easy to confuse standard practice with statutory law. And oftentimes they're not the same, unfortunately. Kansas has 105 counties divided into 31 judicial districts. Often each of those districts has multiple judges, and all of them have a slightly different way of handling bond issues. And one of the reasons I really don't like doing returnable bonds is that I'm unfamiliar with the standard practice in those counties, and I'm unfamiliar with those judges and how they like to handle things. So I can kind of walk into a minefield, that I would be perfectly prepared for in an area that I dealt with. And when I attend national conferences on bail, I find the same thing across the country. Different policies, different procedures, different ways of handling things. To be sure, the bottom line is the same. Get your people to court, or go get them if they don't go to court, or failing that, you pay the full bond. But there's lots of, the broader goal is the same, but oftentimes the devil's in the details. Now, my guest today has taken some steps in his state to try to bring some consistency to bail setting and bail enforcement procedures. Mike Morrison is the president of the Mississippi Bail Agents Association and is one of the most prolific writers on bail that I've seen. He hosts a page on the blog site Medium that has many, many articles and essays on bail issues. And the Facebook page of the Mississippi Bail Agents Association, the MBAA, is full of long-form articles on bail reform, and the politics of bail, as well as the day-to-day information that the MBAA members need. We are lucky that he freed up some time from his writing schedule to talk with us today. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here with you, Shane.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I know that, it's going to be hard to pry you away from the writing desk, but we can talk about some bail issues a little bit here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Everybody kind of has a unique path into what I call bail world. How did you end up down the rabbit hole here doing all this?
My previous life, I was actually working in the oil field around H2S sensors, general electrician type of work. And I didn't like being away from home all the time. And so I started looking for a difference of career where I wouldn't be gone all the time. And I stumbled along to an advertisement back when we had newspapers, and Gene Newman's father, our good friend Gene, his dad ran ads and said, part-time job bail bondsman. I said, well, this sounds part-time is good. I responded. He didn't hire me. I sent him a letter and said, I would have done a good job. You've messed up. 2 weeks later, he called me and actually hired me. And that was in 1991. We had a very good run together during the same time. That's when Gene and his father and some other old school professionals actually created the Mississippi Bail Agents Association. So I got to be there in the very beginning. We would get suited up and go to Jackson and have meetings, go to the Capitol and shake hands and talk about how we can take these 30 and 40-year-old statutes and bring them up into something that's current and more workable, not just for the bail agents, but for our court systems as well. 33 years later, here I am. Fortunate enough, the bail agents elected me 3 years ago to be the president of the Bail Association. I've got an extremely excellent and supportive board. I get a lot of the credit, but having a strong board and people like, Wayne Dowdle, that's on the National Association with PBUS, and to help me and guide me, we just have a great team, and we all have the same message. Protect bail. The services that we provide are just so misrepresented that, it's almost insulting that they don't know our industry better if they're going to attack it. They really ought to do their homework. And
That's
so,
true.
30 years later, like yourself, I go out and write bonds. I wrote bonds yesterday. I'm going to write bonds today. I like working with the people. I want to make sure that they get services. They know the options. They know what they're looking at before they ever contract with me to do a job. There's consequences in a lot of these cases. And before you just jump out and just take care of bail, you need to realize the case is going to make it into the courtroom. Good bail agents want a better informed clientele. And so, as taking my experiences from the 30 plus years in the business, I'm trying to evolve our in-state educational program to be more compassionate, be better informed. We help people get into rehabilitation centers. Some are better than others. I'm a very opinionated.
Does MBAA, do they provide continuing education as part of the services that MBAA provides, or is there a continuing education requirement in the state of Mississippi?
Well, it's a two-prong. To obtain a license, you have to have complete a 40-hour educational course that helps cover the statutes. We have two major statutes, 8339 and 995, that they're tested on by the state through the state testing agency. That program's probably been in existence about 15 years. We're the largest provider. Mississippi's got about 900 bail agents statewide.
Really? Wow.
Our secondary educational program is, right now, we're only required to have 8 hours of continuing education. That is like everything else, it's evolving. And one of my, if you've read a good bit of my work, I don't charge people for my education that I personally write. I've been sharing it on social media, how to take a better bail agent application, how to better indemnify these contracts. After 30 years, what do I give back to my industry? And teaching the next generation, I think we discussed it at ABC in New Orleans recently, who's going to replace us? I'm not a bail writer. I'm a professional bail agent. And my goal now through the remainder of my career, and if they'll have me again for another term as president, and I'm going to ask to run, if my board and the state will support me, I'm going to outline what my next 2 years agenda would be.
Well, I think people don't understand that, when you serve on these state association boards and you get yourself involved and you put all this time and your effort and everything, these are not paid positions. My work as the executive vice president, legislative chair, nobody's paying me for that. I guarantee you I'm out of pocket on those things. But we do provide continuing education for the entire state, and there's a fee for that. But that fee is rolled back into, the other costs and everything else that we do. But, people are like, well, you're just making money off this. It's like, I guarantee you I am not making money off this. I'm doing this for the betterment of the industry. If I'm sharing some way of conducting business, how to do business, I could do that myself without you being involved to my benefit. What I want the entire industry to flourish and continue to flourish. And it sounds like the same sort of thing is going on in Mississippi.
Absolutely. In the next generation, our replacements have got to be better than us. And so we have an obligation. Our board of directors, we've got some fellows that, Gene's been doing this since the 70s.
Right.
how many more, years and decades can Gene work? And, I'd have to turn to him constantly for guidance and, structure. And what would you do in these positions? Because we want to make sure we support and what's the word I want to use? Represent every single bail agent.
Right.
Because even the newest one, they may not know what we do or understand it yet. We still consider their livelihoods. So
well, and there's also making sure they understand what they're doing, what they're getting into, what the consequences of that are, helps down the road that suddenly, that person's not in the news and you're having to go forward and so, well, this isn't normally happen. Better off to make sure people know what they're getting into, know that there's consequences for writing bonds, whether to yourself or to the public as a whole. You don't want to just write everybody that comes up and throws money at you, because some of those people probably shouldn't get out, or you need to get that bond set up in a way to guarantee that they're going to show up and they're not going to reoffend while they're out. And if you can't do those things, I mean, again, nobody's going to be 100% on that, but if you can't at least attempt to do those things, you really shouldn't be posting bond for that person.
And because you've been doing this like myself, we have to involve the families. That is the whole premise behind the indemnity. A contract is, during my presentation and closing upon the defendant's release, is discussing how we don't want this defendant to go back to jail. But we each one have an assignment. I have an assignment. My assignment's to educate them on what their responsibilities are. The family's assignment is to make sure that they know, with my assistance, the who, what, when, where, that little Johnny or Timmy or Lucy has to be at their appointments. And so far, I've been pretty fortunate in keeping my forfeitures at an extremely low level. And now I feel like my obligation is some companies call me and they're talking to me. My forfeitures are overwhelming. I think I did a social media post about it recently and said, let's set up some time and let's talk about building some stronger procedures in-house to help guide you. And she said, would you do that to me? Great woman. And we're going to help her. So I want her to have a 30-year career as well.
Well, you also don't want to then, have the courts go, well, these bail bonds aren't doing what they're supposed to do. It's like, anybody, I mean, that's one of the problems, and we'll talk about bail funds later on, but that's one of the problems with charitable bail is they're just going to throw money at things, and then the consequences be damned. Just on one side deal, somebody told me that you have a castle in France. Is that are you French nobleman here on the side, or what's going on with that?
I know where that comes from. Yes, I do go to France a lot. I try to go twice a year. That's one of those places where there's so much culture. The food is just amazing. I have a lot of friends there. I love museums. I like anything that has nothing to do with bail during my 9, 10, or 12 days that I'm away. Although my phone rings and I do actually answer it when I'm there. I just schedule calls. No, I do not own a castle. I have been looking for a retirement home. Something that faces Notre Dame and the Seine River, and yes, that would be nice.
Oh,
I'm going to have to write a lot more bonds, though.
Well, exactly. I'm sure that
Yes.
even a small apartment on the Rive Gauche is not cheap.
They start at $1 million.
Well, so a lot of bond.
A lot of bonds.
So in Mississippi, where are you? Do you write bond in the whole state? Or are you focused in like Jackson or Biloxi, or where do you base most of your business out of?
I live in Hattiesburg, so I kind of keep a 45-mile circle. Because of my other obligations and traveling so much, I just don't extend to the Jackson or the coastal area. I use a lot of our board of director members.
Right.
And for people that don't know, we have a program during our annual conference, and if I need a bondsman and they bought one of those $25 bail bond business card size ads, I'll flip through my guide and say, I know somebody in South Haven, I know someone in Yazoo, I know somebody that supports my association, and if you support my association, I'm glad to refer bonds to you. I had to send one up to Newton County, which is Decatur, Mississippi, kind of central west, yesterday. And I called the office, said, I've got an attorney going to call you. We'll take good care of them, Mike. They support our association. Again, networking and building relationships with these bail agents. I know them by first name. I'm going to invite you to our association in July. And instead of sitting over there off to the side being unsocial, you'll see me going to speak to every table and say, hey, if you've got issues, reach out to me. And it builds strengths and relationships. It's just like what you and I did at ABC. I had the opportunity. I wanted to meet you. You're famous, and everything, and, but that's how we build our networks. And if you have a forfeiture that you think's in Mississippi, you're going to call old Mike, and Mike's going to hook you up with someone in that area, and we're going to take care of you because we're family. And that's a message that we don't hear enough about because we're always in defense mode of defending what's going on in the media, and we don't have time to strengthen those interpersonal relationships. And that's why I go to the conferences and so proud to support ABC and PBUS is because of that. If I have a forfeiture in Texas, it's not a problem. I got a bail agent friend. I know I got one in Kansas. They might not go to Kansas.
It's one of those things that's nice and that we didn't used to have, 30 years ago. I mean, you'd have to actually pick up and go to, New Orleans or go to, Atlanta or go to wherever that person wants to try and get them back in. And now it really is nice that you can go, okay, here's a bondsman there. If they don't do pickup work themselves, they'll have a bounty hunter that does, and I can get that in contact with that person, and they can at least do some legwork for me. I know when we talked to Jeff Burton about this a while back, it's the same situation and he'd call and go, hey, can you go take a look at this house for me here? And I can do it for you here. It just, and if the person's there, yes, I'll pay you to pick that person up, get you the paperwork, and then we'll meet, or you can bring them back to me. One of the two, we'll get them back into custody. And it's nice to be able to do that remotely, whereas we didn't have that. Back in the day of the call directory, crisscrossing phone numbers, we didn't have that option of just calling somebody across the country. So tell us a little bit more about Mississippi here. When I was in high school, we took a trip through Southern Civil War battle sites. It was we had an interim period in my high school where we did like mini courses, and so this one year. Like 10 of us took trips, and we went all over the place in the South to these war memorial battle sites. So I've been to Vicksburg, and I saw the monuments and the earthworks there, but I haven't been to a whole lot of other places in Mississippi. I think we drove through Tupelo on the way to someplace else and go, hey, Elvis was born over there. So tell us a little bit more about Mississippi. It's about the same size as Kansas, I think, as far as dimensions, but it's probably a lot more varied. You've got ocean, you've got river, you've got Memphis in the north. Tell us about the state.
Well, the bottom three counties are some of the most populous counties we have in Mississippi. The cities like you mentioned, Starkville, Tupelo, Ole Miss, two of those are college towns. So, of course, they've got some pretty decent populations. Tupelo certainly does. And there's South Haven. There's Tunica. Nice medium size. We've got some pretty decent industry. In those areas, of course, there's a lot of agriculture. And then what you mentioned, Vicksburg Warren County is just phenomenal. I had wanted to move our conference to that area in 2026, but they just don't have the accommodating facilities for the large numbers that we attract. And getting in and out's a little more difficult. We need major air, for our national friends to be able to come in. Natchez. We're working with Dan Gibson on some projects in the legislature this year. He and the Mississippi Municipal League are really concerned about violent crimes and the procedures that the judges and courts are using on repeat offenders and release policies. So working together, we've got some things in the work. Natchez is a wonderful place to visit. The food. They've got a place called the Pig Out. That's my first stop. I don't check into the hotel. They said, "Where is he?" "Oh, he's at the Pig Out." My nickname for it's the Piggly Wiggly. They said, "Where is he?" "He's at
That's
the
a
Piggly
different
Wiggly."
business.
It's a different business, but the smoked food, the service, it's an amazing town with really great leadership and a lot of activities. Miss Jackson, on the other hand, our lieutenant governor and governor and the chief of public safety, Sean Tindall, they've worked really hard at addressing the crime problems that have developed since bail reform. Bail reform kind of hit Mississippi starting in 2014.
Right.
Jackson, the city of Jackson, for example, in 2019, quit reporting to the state reporting system, NIBRS. And so we never, since 2019 and after, we don't have accurate crime statistics. Out of the 300 reporting agencies, only about 149 were registered in reporting, and the reporting was so inconsistent. When you hear them say crime's lower in Mississippi, you can't say that. That's a false statement. It's a narrative that our anti-bail people use all the time. Crime's down. No, it's not. Crime reporting's down. And you understand that you can't make decisions and allocate resources when you don't know the truth. Jackson, Mississippi, for example, just went back online in July of 2025. Our legislature passed it, or the requirement, 4 years ago that made it mandatory. And 4 years later, we're only now starting to work our way up to where we're getting some respectable reporting statistics.
So the crime reporting, Jackson is one of the larger cities in the state, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much our largest.
Okay. And so that whole time, for the last 5 years, there've not been any crime statistics being reported out of Jackson.
None.
And at the same time, the people are, the anti-bail people are going, well, crime's down. Why should we be doing anything? But what is it? If you can't measure, you can't solve the problem. Isn't that's an old engineering adage?
And you don't have a problem if the numbers don't support it. Well, you hear the anti-bail people, show us the statistics. They know there's no statistics because they created a system like that.
Right. So, I mean, I think I expected that Mississippi would have several runs at bail reform. Mississippi, I believe, has the largest percentage of black population in the country of any state. And one of the main arguments that bail reformers try and make is, bail is racist. I mean, there's really nothing to support that claim, but it's the claim that gets everybody's emotions all riled up. So what sort of lawsuits have come out of there? And we can talk about legislative bail reform, but we don't talk about lawsuit bail reform because there's been a lot of around the country federal lawsuits where they've tried to strong arm, especially smaller communities, but not always smaller communities, into consent decrees, and we're going to sue you, and we're going to make you spend, $500,000 in legal fees in federal courts that you can't recoup. And so you maybe just take this deal and do away with some of your bond. What are some of the lawsuits that have happened in Mississippi?
Well, let me address something you said right before that question. Our bail association is 50% black owned and 50% white owned. Of course, we do have some Hispanic owners, and I don't know if we have any Asian owners. I'll have to check that statistic with Mrs. Staggs. But we feel like we're really balanced, and we take a political approach that we don't want to be political, especially in our discussions of, well, this, that, and the other. No, we're about public safety and fairness and accountability. Now, to address your question on the legislation, it started in a little tiny county, Scott County, Mississippi. About 2014, they sued over having people sit in jail for owing fines. You go to court, you get found guilty, or you plead guilty, and the court assess you a fine. And then if you don't come and make your payments to the court, they would issue a warrant. And then if you get pulled over in a traffic stop, they would detain you, put you in jail, and let you sit out your fine. So that was the premise behind the very first beginnings of the federal lawsuits here in Mississippi, as I understand it. I do need to give you a little disclaimer. I didn't go to law school, so my interpretations aren't going to be a legal legal one, but from as I understand.
But
And
just to
also,
interrupt you for just a second on that, that has been going on in a lot of places around the country, especially in municipal courts, city courts, because you cannot lock someone up simply for non-payment. But what you can lock them up for is non-appearance. And so they would set a fine payment date that you had to either appear or pay. If you paid, that fine payment date would be set for the following month. And so that way, but if you didn't pay and you didn't show up and ask for additional time, and you could show up and ask for additional time, and the court would grant it. But if you didn't show up, well, then we could issue a warrant for you. And then we had that hammer, and we could either collect a cash bail from you and then use that to pay the fines, or we could say, well, here's your options. You can sit here at $20 a day and work off this fine, although that's never a good deal for the cities because they still have to pay to house those people. Anyway, so that was sort of a way they got around the debtor's prison aspect, because in order to hold someone in custody for non-payment of fines, my understanding is that you have to demonstrate that the defendant has the ability to pay the fines. They're just simply refusing to pay the fines. Anyway, go ahead with the lawsuit stuff.
well, and one of the other things that was included in the very first one, I think it's Burks versus Scott County, 2014 to 2018. When they were being charged with the felony offense, some of our rural counties, their circuit courts don't meet often. They may only meet 4 times a year, and these individuals were sitting in jail, no due process or anything. And so that in the settlements, they addressed those issues. And so statewide, we've seen an improvement in the speed and the handling of cases, which I think all of us could agree is a good improvement. No one should sit in jail and not be arraigned. No one should sit in jail and not have a public defender, appointed to them. Every time they have a hearing, a public defender should be present if they can't afford a private attorney, because they're all Americans too, and they're entitled to their rights and fairness and due process. We want due process, in my life and my family, and I want it for every other family. So, out of that came some good. One of the negatives that came out of this narration of them filing the federal lawsuits across Mississippi is earlier in the year, I was provided a handout where the Justice Court Clerks Association had a spreadsheet that showed the uncollected fines in Mississippi as of probably April or May of this year that exceeded $351 million. And a good bit of it was absent. Harrison County had over $45 million. My home county of Forest County was approaching $5 million in uncollected fines. My issue is, and we brought this up to the legislature and to the state auditor, is these are uncollected fines that belong to the state and to the people of Mississippi, and we need to look at better ways for our court systems to address this, other than we've got their hands tied so hard now. The process in Mississippi to collect it requires hearings, show cause hearings, a contempt of court warrant, and now one of the solutions is turning it over to a collection agency.
Yeah, they've done that in Kansas as well. There's a collection agency that handles everything statewide. I actually got a bill from them for an old bond forfeiture from some other county that they never sent me the journal entry on, and suddenly Butler and Associates sends me the letter. I'm like, yeah, can I get a look at it? Oh crap! And even on the journal entry, it doesn't show that they mailed to me. So I mean, I paid them and I paid them their collection fee. It's like this was just a mistake on my part, but. Yeah. That happens a lot in Kansas. I know that as well. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, and then, where the big one that hurt us was in 2015, Bell versus the city of Jackson. Okay. Same premise, pay or stay system, indigent defendants jailed for inability to pay fines or fees. So they entered the debtor's prison. They set up a procedure where they can pay $25 a month if you're assessed a fine. But all misdemeanor bonding was completely done away with. So since 2015 to present, the city of Jackson does not do any misdemeanor bonding.
And you also mentioned they also don't report any of their crime statistics.
None. If you get, I think on DUIs, they may take you in and require you to post a cash bond only. They don't even use surety bonds.
So,
And that's a trend that's happening all around the city of Jackson and some of the suburbs.
well, I listened to Ken Good, who does another podcast called The Bail Post, and he's with the Texas Bail Association.
Mm-hmm.
One of the points he made years ago at a conference or a forum was, that misdemeanor crimes are the training ground for felony crime. And if you don't get a handle on misdemeanor crimes early, those defendants turn into felons. And so you can just again, it doesn't sound like we have any statistics to back this up, but have you gotten any sort of feel, especially from your agents or your members that are down around Jackson, is that causing additional crime in Jackson? Those same people that are being released on these bonds, and even if it's not the same people, are they creating a more permissive environment in Jackson for crime?
Well, I kind of figured that we would cover this topic. And so I did a little research. And the research that we have to go to is the media reporting. Starting in 2014, in 2015, and basically 2016, when the federal lawsuit started, the homicide rates reported to the media 61, 58, 68, 64. But then we started to see 84, 82, 128, 160. They what's being reported in the media is just gradually increasing. And 160 murders in, the city of Jackson is just ridiculous.
Well, it's at least a doubling from the numbers you gave early on that. And sometimes, I know when I first came into this was in the late 80s, early 90s, so late 80s, and that was right about the time that crack cocaine hit. And I've talked about this before, and you had an explosion in crime, an explosion, and there, and you'd have this, there was, lethal fighting over, drug control areas, drug areas. I mean, it wasn't just that, but you saw a huge bump up in the homicides there, but you could absolutely tag that to the crack cocaine epidemic. I don't think we've seen anything else in these areas other than lenient policing policies and bail reform that would be tied to this. I mean, obviously COVID has an impact, but COVID only has a limited impact when you turn around and let everybody go. And shockingly, people who are locked up get out, and then those people commit additional crimes. Maybe they get caught, maybe they don't, but the crime still occurs.
Absolutely.
So I know we've talked about the crime tracking data, so it's not really there, so we don't really know. Let's talk about kind of my intro there. Maybe get away from this a little bit. Okay. Some of the work you've done with the MBAA, it indicates that you rewrote the Mississippi Bail Procedures Manual, and it appears you're getting some buy-in from some of the courts in your state to help kind of standardize bail procedures across the state. Tell us about that policy manual and what are some of the things that it does to help bring consistency to bail in Mississippi.
Well, our association was the author of the original Bail Procedures Manual, and it was a 20 or 22-year-old document. Okay. We decided to open it up as an association and look in and see what has changed, because naturally some of the statutes needed. We would update the statute sections, but the content itself. So we started with the Marco board and taking the old one and kind of created, an outline. But what we wanted to do, and our goal was to expand on every single topic to improve the understanding at the court level and the judge level about accountability and the benefits of the bail industry. Staying very tight to the statutes, and and the nice thing about Mississippi statutes is they're 3 and 5 paragraphs long for the average. Right. And when it comes to handling bail bonds, issuing forfeitures, revocating license, these are short statutes. So to help the clerks, and one of the things that in 2024 we were doing, we were going to the clerks in the 2023 and 23 and 24 is what helped us decide to make the change. Was we were taking notes and asking them what they needed from us, and all of those notes, when we started to merge everything together to address all of their concerns, because during conferences they ask questions. We document this because that told me we're not addressing the questions inside the guide. Another issue that they had is they're having a huge amount of turnover in the court systems. The senior court clerks that have been doing bond forfeitures for decades are now retiring. Their replacements know absolutely nothing about bail.
Right.
And so we needed to come up with something that's 30 to 40 pages long that can teach step by step about bail. And besides just dropping the statute into the discussion, we would take and put comments, summaries, and even share questions and answers, from our conferences to build a more comprehensive guide. And then since we published it in probably February 1st of 2025, then we would go, we've been attending conferences for court clerks, and we would take stacks and stacks of books and give them to every clerk that's coming. It's also available on our website under resources so they can download. Also, if they need, they can download, they can copy and paste and drop it into an order if they needed to, along with sample forms. We wanted to be the catch-all for all questions bail related in the state of Mississippi. I think we've met that obligation quite well. The bail procedures. Go ahead, sir.
That's sort of that's the sort of thing of institutional knowledge, and given the demographics of our population right now is aging, the baby boomers are basically leaving if they haven't left and retired already. And so you have people that were there for, like I said, 30, 40 years. And if it's not written down, that's just gone. I mean, one quick little story I can. There's a requirement in the local jail we have that you cannot do any sort of what they call business transaction inside the lobby of the jail. And basically, you can't take cash from people, is their argument. So as foolish as it sounds, you get up and walk outside the jail and go, okay, here's the cash, walk back, and you write a receipt and walk back inside. But the reasoning for that was it used to be there was a deputy standing right there, or that was sitting right there in the open area of the lobby, and bondsmen and other people walk up and just count out all kinds of money right in front of this deputy. And they said, okay, we want this temptation to be removed from the deputies. We don't want any of this going on in the lobby of the jail now. Well, they've reworked the lobby. They're all behind glass. You can't have any direct contact with them at all. If I'm sitting around the corner of the lobby and you hand me some cash, it's really not going to be a temptation for that person. But they'll go, well, you can't do any business transaction here. But the people that know that, they don't know why. All they know is, well, we wrote it down in the policy manual. You can't do that. And so the people that understand that were there before, I'm the only one. Nobody in the sheriff's office that was there at the time the policy was enacted is still around. They've all left. And, then I remember there was a deputy there that knew everything. He retired and left, and they were just lost without him. They would call him all hours of the day and night. How do we do this? What do we do here? Where's this? And he's like, he packed up and moved to Arizona. It's like, bye, I'm out of here, man. But you lose that if it's not written down. And better for the bail association to be the source of that wisdom than, some clerk that comes in and they're gone later on and they probably don't do a good job of that.
Well, one of the things that I learned by going to these conferences is when they ask me a question, I keep my copy of the Bail Procedures Manual. And I will repeat the question because usually my 6-foot table is surrounded by other clerks. And I make sure everybody heard the question. Then I flip to the section and I read to them that particular section, and I let them determine what the answer is. I really don't give answers because I can't be, not being an attorney, I can't give legal advice.
Well,
but the statute says this. And they're going, you don't need me. You need the book. And because Mike can't be here forever. Mike's got to go.
Oh, come on. Yes. The castle in France is waiting for Mike.
Yes, yes, they won't. Yes, I'll be living in the castle. I will not wear a crown.
So one of your articles on this topic said that you actually had buy-in from, what was it, the 15th Circuit Court, that they actually adopted that policy manual as their own policy manual? Well,
yes. And Circuit Court Judge Brad Touchstone one of the judges, we have 3 judges of the 15th Circuit Court District. His history was he used to be out in the House of Representatives, and he was our legislator that actually would present our legislation in the House. And so he and I have a strong friendship and a relationship that's really good at the business level. And he contacted me and said, Mike, we have a problem. And our problem is people are not showing up for court. Also, the courts were not properly forfeiting the bail bonds.
Right.
Okay. And, we're not scared of forfeitures. If we do our jobs right, forfeitures don't scare us. And so he began asking questions. He took the guide and created a PowerPoint and a step-by-step procedure that from the beginning, when they're indicted, how to serve indictments. If they don't serve indictments, there's penalties involved. They'll forfeit the bond because it's a scheduled appointment, and it follows the bail bond statutes correctly. Then there's an arraignment where they don't have an attorney. We're getting one appointed. We're getting it put on the docket. The cases are moving quicker. We just got a report from a week ago, Pearl River County, Mississippi, which is headed towards New Orleans, rural county. They had 351 people that were scheduled to sign in. And he sent me a message and said, Michael, it was an outstanding day. The bail, and we're getting the credit in the bail industry or bail profession. We learned at ABC, the bail profession, that we're getting the credit for doing the work. He's the first judge formally said, I'm your biggest cheerleader. Because if we work together, look at what's happening. The people that are being indicted, their cases are moving on to the docket quicker. The bondsmen are happy. They've got to come to work a little bit more, but
Sure.
But the team is there. The relationship between the bail agents, the court, the sheriff's department is strengthening. It's not getting less. They're seeing through this document, they're seeing how when we work together, everybody pulls their own weight, and criminal justice is improving in the state of Mississippi. So again, we're going to end up being one of the leaders as an example. We've all agreed that we're going to present this statewide and ask the Mississippi Judicial College, they're our official education firm out of Ole Miss University, to we just wanted to test it, the waters 1 year, and make adjustments and adaptations to everything, and then present it to the state, where 82 different circuit courts in Mississippi, although we don't have that many districts, will all be functioning in the same manner, on the same page. And bail will be the underlying strength of their system by using the system for accountability and getting people to show up for court, sign-ins, or docket calls better. It's a win for public safety.
Well, and I assume that one of the factors in there is more regular enforcement of bond forfeitures. I mean, Mrs. Court, and there's a declaration they go forward, right?
Consistency.
And so, it's sort of just a perfect example of how accountability actually works. If you hold the bonding companies accountable, they'll make sure people show up for court. If you hold criminals accountable, they'll deviate from their criminal lifestyle, and they will show up for court to have those things addressed. If you don't hold the bondsman accountable, you'll have people come and go, I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to set this up right. I can just take the money and bond this person out. On the same side, if you have criminal defendants that you don't have any consequences for their action, if they don't have to call mama to come get them out of jail, if they don't, if there's no consequence to that, they miss court, and all that's going to happen is a warrant with a signature bond attached to it. There's no consequence for that, and that behavior continues, and it gets worse. So I think it's a perfect example of accountability in action on one side that should also be extended to all sides of the criminal justice system.
Exactly. And we're thrilled to work with them. At first, the bail agents are a little bit, oh gosh, they're going to make us work.
Bond forfeitures suck.
Well, you should think about it and do your paperwork properly, because we're teaching you how to do that. But there's another side to it. In the jails, people are going back to jail. And you know what they're talking about? Don't miss court.
Right.
Don't miss sign-in. You better check in with your bondsman, because if you don't, you're having a jail meal. And
Well,
it's
that's
going to
the
strengthen the respect for both the bail agents and the industry, and it's going to strengthen the court systems that say they're not playing with us. Now, how do you think that that's going to affect public safety across Mississippi in another 2 to 3 years when this becomes standardized practice across the state? Your career criminals that think there's no consequences are going to say, hey, they're not playing with us anymore. I don't want to go back to prison. We see the repeat offenders, they're in and out because one of the next things that we want to address publicly is the parole system. In 2026, the lieutenant governor is going to be talking a good bit about that, the in and out of the parole and the sentencing of defendants. We expect to see a good bit of strengthening in our statutes. The Mississippi Municipal League, I mentioned our good friend Dan Gibson out of Natchez. He's spearheading a campaign to bring the Georgia bill, the Georgia bail bill from 2 years ago, into Mississippi. So the Mississippi Municipal League, that's 330 cities and 330 mayors that are working with our legislative leaders to bring that into Mississippi, again, strengthening our entire legal system and strengthening accountability. The same Senator Chad McMahon that's spearheading that with House of Representative Jansen Owens from Poplarville, he is pro bail. He wants every criminal charge to have a surety bail attached to it. It's either cash bail, property bail, or a surety bail. He wants it across the state. And he's in Jackson today doing exactly that, selling bail. I mean, it's phenomenal how everybody's coming together and the level of respect, and it's not just the NBA doing it. President Trump and what he has done, and Elise Stefanik. I mean, all of these are just the movement is now is the time for us to stand large and promote our industry.
Well, and one of the things that the people that would counter that would say is going to be, well, you're going to have mass incarceration. You're going to have, you're going to fill up the jails to bursting. And what they don't really seem to understand is maybe initially, until the message gets out, until the behavior is altered, that you're not engaging in behavior that puts you in jail in the first place. That is the whole purpose of jail and the criminal code is to create a deterrence. These are the rules of society we expect you to follow. If you don't follow those, there's going to be consequences to those rules. If you start enforcing the consequences, yes, there's going to be an initial uptick of people in custody. But over time, that's going to go down because you're going to have a better society. People are not going to be out committing these crimes.
And I think you know what's coming next for me. I took their narrative and published on my account on Medium, where I discussed the bail industry and marginalized citizens. Do you know who's the best friend of marginalized citizens in America? The bail profession.
Absolutely.
The bail profession. And they say, now, Michael, how is that possible? I sit at the table with an awful lot of Democratic senators and House of Representatives, and I'll tell them exactly how. What happens when you get arrested and you're the breadwinner of your home? You might ride a trash truck or drive one. You may be in construction. You live paycheck to paycheck. These people get arrested, even if it's on a minor felony, and they've got a small down payment. We argue that, we don't have a problem with credit bail bonding in America. What we have a problem is image in that department. These marginalized people need to get back to work. If they're not at work on Monday morning, they lose their job.
Sure.
Everybody loses your job if you don't show up, because that's just the way society has moved to. There's no compassion and leadership and no understanding. Also, who's going to feed the family? What if there's children? There's so many, human factors that are involved. And if we do our jobs and our statistics prove that we are reliable. I mean, we've been reliable for over 100 years.
Right.
Plus our history shows that we're reliable. And there's another point I'll make on revocations, that we don't have an issue. And that's why I wrote The Quiet Truth about how bail professionals support marginalized people. They need us. We need them. We from our income, we also support our families. We grocery shop. We pay utility bills. We hire yardmen. We pay for car maintenance. It stimulates our economy. It's a really healthy part of capitalism. And the premiums that they pay are fair. Now, if you don't have it all, most bondsmen will work out some type of reasonable payment plan with some indemnity from your family guaranteeing the payments. We don't put people back in jail for not paying bonds. We call their indemnitors, and just like when you finance a car for your son or daughter, if they miss a payment, they don't repo the car. They call the indemnitor and say, little Johnny or Lucy has missed a payment. You need to come by the office. Oh, well, thank you for calling. My customers don't hate me. They understand that I'm protecting them and I'm helping them, and I also work for them. A message that bail agents need to learn when you hire me to write a bond, I work for you. I don't work for the courts. I don't work for the sheriff or the police department. I work for the client, and their interests are my interest. And if they can make their payments, they can go to work, they can take care of their family, I feel like a better citizen and a good person too. You don't ever see that in these negative articles from Vera, Brennan, the Arnold Foundation. They don't know us because they never bothered to talk to us. And one of my other arguments that when I'm with legislators is, if you go to the Mississippi Department of Insurance's website and you look at revocation orders on the state of Mississippi for bail agents, 1 or 2 a year out of 900 bail agents, what kind of statistics is that?
That's a great statistic.
It's got a decimal and zeros. Right. We don't have a problem. The Sheriff's Association had me in to speak and put on a presentation. They presented me with questions and asked for answers. And then they asked about credit bail bonding. I said, Sheriff, you don't have a problem. If you accept a $100,000 bond from Mike Morrison, that $100,000 bond is good. Forfeit it, and if it goes to final judgment, watch Mike Morrison pay the bond. That's fair. It's fair. We don't talk about it because we don't like to talk about money, because we look at it as that we shouldn't be about money. But when it comes to courts and accountability, is Mike accountable for the bonds that he issues to that court? And yes, he is.
Sure, but that doesn't play well with the Facebook legal crowd. When they see the news article and somebody who's out on a 1 or 2% bond, and then they've committed some additional crime while they're there because the bondsman didn't do what Mike Morrison would do and get everything set up properly. They just took a small down payment, and now there's some new crime, and then it's the bail bondsman's fault for doing that. And why was this person ever out? I mean, then you have the Facebook legal team that's also, why is this person even in custody? They haven't been convicted of anything. The one thing that you should bring up there that I want to touch with is bail reformers arguing about that we're not the friend to the marginalized community. Keeping in mind when that pendulum swings back the other way, and it does. I did a story about the Safety Act in Chicago where I went through the whole history of the Illinois Constitution, where they took away your right to bail. They took away bail bondsmen in Illinois in the mid-'60s. Within 5 years, they had to alter their constitution to allow them to lock up more people. Another 10 years after that, they had to alter their constitution again to allow them to lock up more people. This Safety Act is just going to be the same thing. So you're going to end up with people who cannot get out under any circumstances. We saw the same thing with the Bail Reform Act in 1984. 25% of people, stayed in custody at a federal level before that. Now 75% stay in custody. I mean, if you are a marginalized person and you don't even have access to bail at all, that's mass incarceration. Making someone post a bail to ensure their appearance is not mass incarceration.
Yeah.
So let me touch on one thing before we get off, because we got the one thing I was looking at initially was AI related stuff, because we've had some stuff come up. We had a guy that called us. It reached out to us a while back. When you're big time podcast, that you've got to there's Joe Rogan, and then there's the Bail in the Midwest podcast. We had a guy call us, a doom guy. AI was going to kill us all and put us out of business and put everybody. The whole world was going to crash because of AI, and he wanted to see if we'd have him on the podcast. And it's like, after I spent a couple of weeks scaring myself to death about the future of AI, I'm like, sure, we'll talk. And then he disappeared. But you actually also did an article where you engaged with the X.com AI called Grok to kind of discuss bail issues. Can you kind of tell us how that worked out here, and we'll wrap it up?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked, because if you'll look at the end of that article on Medium, I shared the Grok response to our interaction. I like to take AI and ask it questions, and I want it to be a generic question like a researcher would ask. Tell me about bail in Mississippi.
Right.
And it'll come up with, just page after page scrolling. And it takes a few minutes to read it. And I'll start with one paragraph at a time and say, and I always tell it, I disagree with the narrative that you've shared. And David Stuckman, our great president from PBUS, taught me that when you do ask these questions, you need to include in the questions, if you're dealing with AI, is for them to share their source. You know where their sources are. You know.
Oh, yeah, no.
Vera, Brennan, right. MacArthur, Arnold. So I'll tell them, I disagree with your conclusions because you've only cited anti-bail organizations. Where are some, balance and fairness in your response? And then we just begin, it's just like talking to you and me. You asked me a question about bail in Mississippi. Well, bail is highly regulated. We're not renegades. Every single step of the process, there's a Mississippi statute that outlines how we do. So we just begin dialogue. And the problem is you'll be sitting here and you can end up being on the thing 2 hours just doing question and answers. And that's not the way I do business. My clients call me. I call my clients. If they have a flat tire and I'm in the courtroom, I'll go up to the judge and show them a picture of the car with the flat tire. And you would do that? I said, yes. I'm an employee of this person.
Right.
I work for the client. The client's well-being is my interest. The court's interest is not my interest. The outcome of cases is not my affair. My affair is butts and seats. And somebody needs to represent these marginalized people, because rich people don't have flat tires. Not often. Come on.
Right.
They don't have them the same way somebody that's driving around on bald tires with no insurance. So, the engagement with the Grok AI was very educational and helped me understand how the AI could be perceived as a negative for bail. But David and I had a conversation after PBUS for about an hour and 30 minutes, not PBS, at the ABC conference about getting pro-bail communications populated on Google and through the AI systems.
Right.
That will be a big task that we need to work on as an industry in 2026. One of the articles.
Just in that vein, when I was thinking about this, I went into Google's chatbot and go, okay, so what are the problems with bail? And of course, it kicks up a whole list of all the people you just talked about. And then I go, bail bond benefits. And then it pulls up a whole list and there's all their sources there. There's a lot of bonding companies that work on SEO for their web pages, and they put these sites in place. And a lot of them talk about the good things about bail, and those AIs are pulling that from there. So, I mean, if you do that as a bail bond company and you engage in SEO by, using these sites and putting these extra posts on your website, it's always good to put in something about how great bail is, because, it will be scraped and pulled from there.
My Medium is slowly being acknowledged by Google.
Yay.
Yeah, progress. Rome wasn't built in a day, and they've got resources far beyond our ever expectations of having, but doesn't mean that we're not going to go after them. One of the other things that is important to share with bail agencies is looking at who the author is in these Vera articles. They seem to be our number one posting, and we're getting college students that are maybe working on a thesis or something on a graduate level that they're doing AI, but they're copying from the same negative sources, but they're regurgitating. They're not sharing the Yolo County statistics from California that we're all proud of, because that's factual data that says something contradictory to what they, are wanting to push. And they're not going to push our narrative. we're going to have to push our narrative. And that goes back to we've got to continue submitting data with references to the AI, and it will evolve. And in the bottom of the article, I ask it, how does AI learn? It doesn't learn like you and I do, but it does learn. So for me, it's an exciting non-bail, but still bail research area to learn from.
The one thing I was thinking about on this was years and years ago, Michael Crichton, author of Jurassic Park and several other books. I mean, before he died, he indicated that he thought that the internet would be the end of innovation, and obviously that wasn't the case in the early stages, but with AI being added in here, are we getting closer to that? In that, if AI chatbots are our primary source of information, our primary source of research, and we just go, okay, what's going on here? And it spits out the same answer to everybody and go, well, that must just be the answer. Are we going to lose the ability with these AI, especially large language models, because they're just pulling lots of data, regurgitating and spitting it back out. There's no, value judgment attached to it. There's no morality attached to it. It's just, okay, here's the stuff. And it's a predictive analysis of what the next word might be, sort of thing. And so they're throwing that out there. But are we doing the old computer thing of garbage in, garbage out? Is that how does that affect us society-wise going forward?
I think if you ask ChatGPT that, it'll tell you, it'll give you that answer that garbage in is garbage out. And ChatGPT has got some of the most false narratives of the engines but we're working on teaching it. It's just going to take time. Right. But like anything, understanding the problem and addressing the problem is the first step in resolving the problem. When we see ChatGPT 10, it'll be nothing at all like what we have today in 5. I do think that we have a big task ahead of us. But we've never run from difficult times or hard tasks, have we? We're bail agents.
Well, yeah, we're always running after difficult tasks.
We seem to thrive on them for some reason.
Yeah, I think I was up at 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, it's interesting stuff when you're looking for people. We found a picture on Instagram of a person we thought was our guy and couldn't really identify him, but we were able to we knew the town, and there was a picture of a house in the background. And we had the house number. And so getting on the computer and you're running through just searching those numbers. And then I'm searching every single house in the city that starts with those numbers, seeing if it's the same house. I'm like, okay, finally, like page 7, that's the house right there. Now we can look and see if we can go. Unfortunately, it turned out it wasn't the guy we're looking for, so we didn't actually go there. But it's like all this data that's out there you can use, and it's helpful, but it can also be abused.
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about the future stuff. So generally, I want to close off. What's the future here? I mean, it sounds like, we got to, have our castle in France and have some, the NBA, take things over. What else is looking for the future? The more short-term future for Mike Morrison and for the Mississippi Bail Association.
I think that we're going to continue working with the Mississippi legislature. We're in less than 30 days. We've already been discussing bail reform. We've got great legislation, continuing to update old statutes. Talk with reason, practical reasons. I had a conversation with Senator Joey Fillingame. He's the chairman of Judd B of our Mississippi Senate committee. And I was discussing, how old are your 2 children? And he said, we need to start looking at improving the public safety, because how long before they're going to be teenagers? And he said, I've never thought about it like that. We got some work to do. It's not about you and me. It's about our neighbors, our communities, and our children. Do we really want them coming into a world where we've not done the best job we can? And the answer, none of us would say, yeah, let's just leave it alone. We're too busy. No. We have a monumental responsibility to take here. And that's why we go to ABC. I'm sure I'm going to see you at PBUS in just a few months. And I think that you're going to see at this conference something completely different. I'm going to be along with one of the guest speakers, along with, legendary speakers like Eric. Grandoff, legendary speaker. I'm just honored to be able to be on the same podium, that people like him and Mike Whitlock and, yourself stand on, because we have got to work harder and together. But bail is the solution in a lot of the problems, not bail reform.
No, not at all. No, I think
bail reform has made nothing but a mess.
And will continue to make a mess until people just get tired of it.
Yes.
Why are we pouring our money down here? I mean, unfortunately, bail reform is failing, but unfortunately it's failing one victim at a time.
And we're not going to forget those victims either. If you look at the social media pages across Mississippi, the state associations, they're sharing news stories about real victims and real crime. I have mixed feelings on being just regurgitating news stories, but there are real people in those stories, and we can't forget their names or their faces.
And Mike, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. I really appreciate you coming on. I know we could go on for hours because you have so much more information. I'll do a closing here. I'll refer everybody, but absolutely, people need to go to the Mississippi Bail Agents Association Facebook page, subscribe to that for all the information you put out there, your Medium page. I'll throw those up here as well. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It was really fun.
Pleasure to be here. Anything you need, holler.
All right, awesome. Thank you. We would like to thank once again our guest, Mike Morrison, for taking the time to talk to us today. I strongly suggest that anyone in the bail bond industry or profession follow the MBAA Facebook page and read the post. Mike is articulate and prolific on the things he posts. This is critical information for anyone involved in bail bonds to have. You can also find additional long-form articles on his blog on Medium, which is at medium.com/@MDMorrison. Mike is an incredible source of information about all aspects of bail and criminal justice. And please join us on the next episode in the Bail in the Midwest podcast, where we'll also try to be a wealth of information about bail and continue to bring you critical information and conversations with people involved in the criminal justice system.
Join us again next time for the Bail in the Midwest podcast, hosted by Shane Rolf and executive produced by David Stuckman.